I'm sorry, Command Sergeant Major Robert Odine. And I'm sure that was a huge gap, but of course, I don't know my ranks all that well. So anyway, this man is really, he is a one-man disclosure project, and he is also a dear friend of both mine and Bill's, and has been for many years. In fact, was one of our original Project Camelot witnesses many years ago, and we have done, I think, at least 3 interviews, maybe 4, and we also have had him at our 2009 Awake and Aware, and he is, he's just the kind of rebel with a cause that is an inspiration to all of us. And I want to say that he's also sort of got those Pleiadian roots that you can just sense about him, which is very heartwarming, at least for people like me. And I just want to say that the amount of love in this man's heart and what motivates him to get up every day and to continue to do so is has to be an inspiration to all of us. He is fearless, and he has been deep inside, down the rabbit hole, as they say, and has been privy to information that he still has not completely shared with us. And we are told that if we ply him with enough Jack Daniels, that he's going to tell all. And so that's actually one of my missions for the conference. So we fully intend to do that. First, we're going to allow him to speak, to give his 2-hour thing here. But I assure you that we are not going to stop until he's given us every bit of information that he possibly can. Because I have to say, no, he's one of the old boys of the Old Boys Network, and he has their respect. He's actually been told that he has to come out and talk to us. So in many, many ways, he is literally a one-man disclosure project. And I will let Bill say a few words.
What Bob told me was that the only reason why each time he speaks he doesn't tell us everything he knows is because then we wouldn't need to invite him back to any more conferences. He's having way too much fun. So this is another installment of Bob's enormous personal library. He has a heart the size of a small planet. He has more experience than any of us can reasonably imagine. And talking with him publicly or privately, it's always been an enormous privilege, and I'm very proud to call him my friend. This is Bob Dean.
And we're just shuffling things around. You should be wired up, Bob. Let's hear you talk and make sure your mic works.
Yeah, can you hear me? Is it coming through? Hello? One, two, three. Oh, yeah, well. All right, 1, 2, 3. You can hear me now. Okay. Thank you, Carrie, for that very sweet introduction.
Is this okay for you, sir?
Yeah, I just need some place where I have a note or two here, and I need to access. I'm in a rather fragile condition. I spent some time last night with a bunch of rowdies out here, table. And every time I get with a bunch of rowdies, I tend to be led astray. And I tend to drink too much and smoke too much. Anyhow, by the time it was over, I was a wreck, and I had to crawl into bed at about 2 in the morning, and I'm not quite back yet. But I will do my damnedest to give you what I've got to say today, because I came here because I consider it important. Okay. These techies, these guys amaze me. I mean, as you probably know, I'm not a technician, and I don't even own a computer. I refuse to have one of the damn things. I find them intrusive, insecure, and addictive. And I got into some rather serious remote viewing some years ago, and some meditation and some reflection and introspection, and got into some rather serious remote viewing. And I don't need a damn computer. They get in the way. So I would be the first to admit that I'm not, what is it they call it? Cyber. I'm not a cyber person, and I am a computer nitwit, really, when it comes to that. But fortunately, there are some lovely people who are helping me here. And we have a few photographs to share with you in a few moments. And okay, let's get started. A little over 100 years ago, a brilliant French philosopher, writer, poet by the name of André Gide made a statement that I consider to be very profound. He said that everything that has needed to be said, everything that is necessary to have been said, has already been said. But then he went on to say that no one was listening. No one was paying attention. So it all has to be said again. And I think that's appropriate, because here I am. I've been speaking publicly now for over 20 years. And as I may have said last night, I get to a point, I think I get into a point where you consider it a crisis of self-confidence, where I begin to wonder, has it made any damn difference? I've been speaking all over the world. I have a map in my office at home, and a world map, and I've got a bunch of little pins here and there. And the other day I was looking at it, and the map of the United States is practically full with little pins. And then I start looking about the world itself, and I find, my God, there are pins here, there, and everywhere. And it dawns on me why the hell I'm tired. Some of you may have noticed, I sure as hell have, that I seem to be getting older. And I don't have the stamina, and I don't have the energy and the strength that I used to have. I'm not surprised. I mean, that's part of the game. That's part of the territory. But I do get to a point now and then where I think, has it made any difference? And thank you for the loving support and the nice comments. But I look out at the mass of people in this country and around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, most of them haven't a clue. They haven't a clue as to what the hell is really going on in this world, or how they fit into it. They go on about their business, you know, and I'm not trying to fault them. Don't misunderstand me. I jokingly sometimes refer to Joe Sixpack. You know, the average guy out there, the working man, the guy with a family and kids and trying to pay a mortgage, trying to hold on to a job, trying to hold on to his house. And God bless him, he's going through hell, just holding on. My God, we just heard in the newspapers recently that 45 million Americans are under the poverty level. So my heart goes out to Joe Sixpack, and I won't say anything negative about him. I just wish the hell he'd pay a little more attention to some of the more important things in the world. Oh, God. Let me go back a bit. Why I'm even here. Many, many years ago, guys, I stumbled across a reality that I was not prepared to confront. And when I found out really what was going on in the world, I was in a state of shock. Now, to some degree, I'm still in a state of shock. Because the reality that I have confronted over the last 50 years of my life has still left me shaken. And even today, after having spoken out for 20 years, over 20 years now, when I bring it up and share it with you, I still find that it shakes me up some. I've learned to confront this reality, and I've learned to become relatively comfortable with it. If comfortable is not the right word, I guess, but anyhow, back to André Gide. He said everything has to be said again because no one was paying attention, no one was listening. And it's appropriate that I share this little quote with you. 415 years ago, a brilliant scientist in Italy by the name of Giordano Bruno made this statement. He says, innumerable suns exist. Innumerable earths revolve around those suns. And living beings inhabit those worlds. Well, somebody paid attention to poor old Bruno because the nitwits in the Vatican burned him at the stake in the year 1600. But I'm here 415 years later, reminding you how right Giordano Bruno was. When I was in Italy, I went to his statue at the very spot where they burned him at the stake in 1600, and I laid some flowers at the bottom of his statue. And I will never forgive the Vatican for what they did. Now, they apologized to Galileo, and I know Galileo appreciated that. But they have not yet apologized to what they did to Giordano Bruno. Okay, as you can tell, I tend to ramble some. Forgive me. It goes with the territory. I think it's part of my, I'm an old fart. I mean, I can get away with rambling because just as long as I can walk around and still show up. What is it I've been talking about now for 20 years? I've been talking about what I consider to be the greatest story in human history. And it is essentially the greatest story of human history. Guys, we're not alone. And we have never been alone. The human race on planet Earth has had, as I have discovered, an intimate interrelationship with advanced extraterrestrial intelligence from the very beginning of our history. That intimate interrelationship is still underway. You're hybrids. Everybody in this room is a hybrid. You've all had your genome manipulated by advanced extraterrestrial intelligence. And that intimate interrelationship involving that manipulation of the genome is still underway. It hasn't stopped. These advanced intelligences literally created Homo sapiens, what we used to call Cro-Magnon, I believe it was. And then the manipulation continued, and then they created Homo sapiens sapiens. Well, I can tell you that in this room tonight, there are Homo sapiens sapiens sapiens. There are hybrids in your midst. And I have never been to a conference in over 20 years where there wasn't at least one or two and sometimes three or four advanced extraterrestrial intelligences in the audience. They move around among you. They sit beside you in restaurants, in airplanes, in conferences like this. And only in the last few years, when I have really gotten deeply into this matter, they have begun to come up and introduce themselves to me at conferences. You think that isn't a bit of a shock? I kind of learned like Ingo Swann. I developed the ability to kind of spot them. It's kind of an intuitive inner awareness, I think, that I have been able to develop over the years, where I can go into a room full of people and I can generally, as Ingo says, spot one or two. And people keep coming up to tell me and say, introduce me, show me who it is, tell me, Well, that would not be very nice, because I don't want to put them on the spot. You never know what human beings might do. Anyhow, the story is simply the greatest story in human history. It's underway. And I say extraterrestrial intelligence, and I must clarify here. When I retired from the Army in 1976, which is back before a lot of you were even born, we knew that we were not only dealing with people who were coming here from other planets, we were dealing with people who were coming here from other star systems. We learned that we were dealing with people who were showing up here from other galaxies. And in 76, when I retired, the Army had learned that we're dealing with guys that are popping through portals from other dimensions. And it's, my God, put this all together. Interplanetary, interstellar, intergalactic. The universe is not at all what you might think it is. It's a strange, beautiful, glorious universe filled with intelligent life. But it's not at all what your scientists and your astronomers and your astrophysicists have told you. Not at all. And there's a young man in the front row shaking his head because he knows. Where am I? Okay, I have been running a little feud with Carrie Cassidy. I love the girl. She's a sweet person. Carrie and Bill have almost become like family to me over the years. But Carrie and I have had this little difference of opinion for some time about disclosure. Now, you heard the joke, you've heard the games, you've heard all the yakety-yak about, is there going to be disclosure? Is somebody at some point going to have a news conference and get up in front of a whole bunch of people, the president, as it were, hey guys, have we got news for you? Golly, we're not alone. Yak, yak, yak. You can just hear the excitement and all. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that ain't going to happen. Because I've learned that the story is simply too damn big. There is not going to be a disclosure, and I appreciate Carrie, and I love her dearly. But in my opinion, the story is simply too damn big. And the analogy that I use is, it's like opening Pandora's box. Many of you are familiar, most of you probably are familiar with the old story, the myth about the lovely girl in ancient Greece who was given a box by one of the gods, and in this box were treasures, but in that box were also furies. And she was advised never to open that box. Well, being a young girl, thank you, that's very thoughtful of you. Being a young girl, like young girls are, she couldn't resist, and she opened the box. And she saw the treasures. But she also saw the furies. And the reality of the extraterrestrial presence is like opening Pandora's box. You can't open it just a little peep. You can't open it just a little crack. Because once you open it just a tiny bit, boom, the whole damn thing flies open. And all of it comes out. Not only the treasures, but the furies. And there's nobody in government who's stupid enough, to, in my opinion, to open Pandora's box. Now, I will tell you that, in my opinion, a form of disclosure is underway. But I consider it a type of disclosure which I describe as subliminal education. It's been going on for 20 years. It's been going on for more than that, going on 40 years. But I do not plan to be on the planet long enough to see disclosure. And I'm hanging around for another year, maybe. So, you know. You guys will see it. Many of you will. Young men like David might see it. But it's happening. But you ain't going to get a news conference, a press conference, where the president gets up and says, hey, we got big news. Old Barack is not stupid. He's got enough on his plate right now that he sure as hell doesn't want to get involved with this thing. Because it really is the greatest story in human history, and it's the story of human history. And it's the story of who you are, what you are, how you came to be, and where you're going. As I said, we're not alone. We've never been alone. We've had this intimate interrelationship with advanced intelligence. That interrelationship is still underway. And it's still taking place. And the human race, the human species, is changing, growing, developing, changing in front of our very eyes. Now, what is some of the big story here? What is some of the secrets? What is really going on? Well, again, forgive me because I tend to ramble. But I excuse myself. You know. When I was young, many years ago, I was trained to be an intelligence analyst. I was trained by the Army to be an intelligence analyst. And I think many of you know exactly what an intelligence analyst is. You gather data. You collect data. You weigh, you sift, you evaluate, you analyze data to try to figure out what the hell is going on. As we used to say, you massage the data continually. You never stop collecting. You never stop analyzing, evaluating, weighing it, and sifting it. And you, eventually, if you're successful, you come up with a fact, a theory, a hypothesis, perhaps. Well, one of the greatest intelligence analysts in my history, in my study of history, a man that I admired and respected, who died about the time I was born, a fellow by the name of Charles Fort. And I have a quote from Charles Fort that I need to share with you this afternoon. And it touches upon the reality of the subject that we're discussing this afternoon. Charles said in 1919, I think we are property. I should say we belong to something. That once upon a time, the earth was a no man's land. That other worlds explored and colonized here and fought among themselves for possession. But that now, it's owned by someone or something, owns this earth, and all others are warned off. Now, this is in 1919. I suspect that all of this has been known perhaps for ages to certain ones upon the earth. A cult or order, members of which function like bellwethers to the rest of us. or as superior slaves or overseers, directing us in accordance with instructions received from somewhere else in our mysterious usefulness. This is in 1919. Charles Fort, one of the greatest intelligence analysts of all time. I'm sorry? Charles Fort. They created what's known as the Fortean Society in memory of him. And as a matter of fact, there's an organization, I think Fate magazine is probably affiliated with the Fortean Society. But Charles was way the hell ahead of his time. But he paid attention. Now I have another quote, if you bear with me. Before he died in 1971, Professor Fred Hoyle, a world-famous British astrophysicist in London, said at a small news conference, "Human beings are simply pawns in a game of alien minds that control our every move. They are everywhere, in the sky, on the sea, all over the earth. It is not just an alien intelligence from another planet or another star system, but it is actually from another universe, which from our very beginning has been controlling all that has been happening since." And not long after that, Fred Hoyle died. An astrophysicist. Man, he's getting close. Charles Fort, we're property. Fred Hoyle, we are owned by someone. Someone's manipulating us. Now, there's another brilliant writer, philosopher, a guy I've met and a guy I respect, by the name of William Bramley, who's written a dynamite book called The Gods of Eden. And many of you have read Bramley's book. I had hoped that Bill Bramley would show up here. That's not really his name. He's an attorney, and that's a pseudonym. It's a nom de plume, as they say. But in his book, Bramley said this, and that book is dynamite. "Human beings appear to be a slave race, languishing on an isolated planet in a small galaxy. As such, the human race was once a source of labor for an extraterrestrial civilization, and still remains a possession." Now, those of you who are familiar with the work of Zecharia Sitchin, you're going to have some clicking going on in your head here. Remember what old Zechariah said. The Anunnaki literally created us as a workers' race. Anyhow, they created us as a source of labor for an extraterrestrial civilization, and we still remain a possession. Today, to keep control over its possession and to maintain Earth as something of a prison that other civilizations have bred, never-ending conflict among human beings has promoted human spiritual decay and has erected on Earth conditions of unremitting physical hardship. Boy, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? This situation has existed for thousands of years and continues today. Furthermore, it is conceivable that the alleged ownership of Earth may have changed hands over the millennia in the same way that ownership of a corporation can pass among different owners without the public even being aware of it. Now, these little tidbits, Fort, Bramley, Fred Hoyle. Oh, bear with me, another quotation. Remember our favorite Nazi? Who can speak up and say, who was our favorite Nazi? Werner von Braun. Hit it right on the head. Werner said in 1959 in a news conference in Chicago, And this comment was placed in the Chicago newspapers in 1959. He said, "We find ourselves faced by powers which are far stronger than we had hitherto assumed, and whose base is at present unknown to us. I cannot say more at present. We are now engaged in entering into closer contact with these powers." This is Werner in 1959. Another German, Professor Hermann Oberth, one of the world's greatest rocket scientists, said, "We cannot take the credit for our own record advancement in certain scientific fields. We have been helped by the people of other worlds." Now the plot thickens. The stew is getting thicker here, guys. Where does all of this lead us? Well, I can tell you where it has been leading me over the years. We are on this tiny planet deeply involved with advanced intelligences from all kinds of other places. As I said, we're not only dealing with guys from other planets, we're dealing with guys from other star systems, we're dealing with guys from other galaxies, and we're dealing with guys that are popping through portals from other dimensions. This is all going on all the time. Now, who the hell are these people? And why are they here? And why are they interested in us? And what the hell is it all about? Well, I can tell you a little bit, being a student of history, who our ancestors considered them to be. And I love history. If we only just learn to pay attention to it. If we only learned a few lessons from history. But our ancestors, over the centuries, from ancient Sumer to Greece, Rome, called them the following. These guys we're talking about. Controllers, protectors, gardeners, emissaries, watchers, angels, messengers, guardians, monitors, recorders, and some ancient civilizations called them the builders. I call them the custodians. I think that word probably is closer to what their role really is. They are custodians. I guess if I had gone to bed like I should have last night and not spent time with that bunch of rowdies, I'd be in better shape.
Check.
A different mic?
Start with this one.
All right. Is that better? All right. Okay, we were talking about who these guys are. I'm sorry, guys, I don't hear that.
We hear you perfectly.
All right, honey, thank you so much. Who are these guys? They're all over the damn place. They're in our midst. There's a couple of three of them, I'm sure, sitting here this afternoon in this audience. I've never been to a conference where there wasn't really one or two. We're being analyzed, guys. We're being surveyed. We're being observed. We're being monitored. We're being guided. We're closely watched. We're being weighed, evaluated, examined, tested, encouraged, nourished, and nurtured. Who's doing the job? Who's doing all this nurturing? Who's doing all this testing, watching, encouraging, whatever? Well, we got some biologists, anthropologists, chemists, psychologists, philosophers, geneticists, linguists, geologists, zoologists. Oh, the scientific field is covered entirely with these guys, and some of them are something else. I mean, they're eons ahead of us when it comes to the sciences. And by the way, the planet Earth is currently quarantined. I wanted to let you know that. It's not so much that keeping other people from coming, it's to keep us from going out there. Because we are considered a primitive, savage, and dangerous race. And I agree wholeheartedly. We are a primitive, savage, and dangerous race. And we have no goddamn business going out there. Because if we can't get our own act together here and stop warring against each other, what in the world do we think that we can take our little pensions to go out into space-time, to the galaxy? Okay. Forgive me for the rambling. You've heard these quotations. You've heard these comments about us being property. I have had an experience where I have been told, literally, what the situation really is. We aren't just property. We are under quarantine, by the way, but we aren't property. They don't own us, as it were. The closest example that they have given me, and I've gotten this face to face with some of them, the human race on planet Earth is under what I would describe as a trusteeship. And I think all of you are aware of what a trusteeship is. You've heard about the establishment of a trust. Let's say a wealthy father, a millionaire, billionaire father, has about 3 or 4 kids. They're adolescents, they're not grown up yet. They can't be trusted. He's got a fortune, and he wants to leave it to them, and he wants to give them the benefit of that fortune, but he knows damn well he can't turn over that fortune to these nitwits, these young kids running around, because they'd screw things up royally. So he puts a trust. He establishes a trust. And he puts all the money and all the goodies and all the power and the property and everything else in this trust. And it's designed that when the kids grow up and mature and go through their adolescence and become adults, that they can claim the trust. They can claim the joy, the benefits, the goodies, the power, the property, all that stuff. Because they're mature enough that they'll be able to deal with it and handle it intelligently in a mature way. Well, that's what a loving father will do sometimes, a billionaire father who loves his kids, but he doesn't trust them yet because they haven't grown up yet. So he establishes this trust. Now, the trust has a board of trustees. And this board of trustees advises and makes decisions on the property, on the wealth and the value. And as I'm describing this, think of how this applies to our situation here on this planet today. We are under a trusteeship. There is a board of directors, there is a board of trustees, and there is a decision-making authority to the trust. Well, I can tell you that this decision-making authority is not even in our galaxy. And that's a shock when I first found out that there is indeed what is known as a galactic federation. So help me God, there is a galactic federation, and the headquarters is not even in our galaxy. Okay. Excuse the rambling here again. You've heard the term black government, shadow government. And many of you may not even know what the hell we're talking about. We know this, that the government you think you've got is not the government you've got. Now, We all laugh and joke and make fun of that bunch of nitwits back there that calls itself a Congress. I call them nincompoops. They really don't know what the hell's going on either. But they think they're running the country, but they're really not. They're making things up. They're messing around with money and taxes and all this and other. And they're starting wars here and there. And there's another bunch of nitwits at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Nitwits and nincompoops. God, we need Mark Twain. I wish the hell he was back. He had ways of describing these guys. I think it was Mark Twain who said that we had a form of constitutional government that was designed by geniuses to be run by idiots. And I think that pretty well describes what's been going on in Washington recently. But there is a shadow government, guys. Has been for some time. Let me give you another quotation, if I may. This was by Daniel Inouye, United States Senator from Hawaii in 1987. He says this: there apparently exists a shadowy government, apparently with its own Air Force, its own Navy, its own fund-raising mechanisms, and its own ability to pursue its own ideas of the national interest, free from all checks and balances, and obviously free from the law itself. Dan Inouye said that in 1987. And boy, did he hit the nail on the head. So what you see back there, what you read in the newspapers, what you see on television, is really a farce. The nincompoops are at work. They're screwing things up. They're messing around with this beautiful constitutional idea. They're trying to wreck it, literally. But they're not really in charge. I'll tell you that the trusteeship is in charge. I also want to share something with you about the benefits of modern science. Another quote, if you don't mind. Wendell Stevens and I were a dear friend of mine. I miss him terribly. He went home last year. Wendell and I put a conference together in Phoenix in 1993. And one of the speakers that we got to speak at this conference in Phoenix was a scientist, a NASA scientist by the name of David Froning. Now, David had spent 30 years working with the Advanced Systems Division of McDonnell Douglas and NASA. David, in 1993, said in front of 1,500 people in Phoenix at a big conference, he said, "We have had hyperluminal flight capability for the past 30 years. And Wendell and I did a double take and said, wait a minute, David. Hyperluminal flight? You say we've had it for 30 years? He said, oh, yeah. We've been using transluminal flight since 1960. He said, we are using a modified field propulsion system utilizing exotic field tension through matter-antimatter conversion that actually modifies time and space. We can literally create a variable field around the craft that completely insulates the craft and anyone in it from the space-time continuum. And it regularly limits of inertia and gravity. Inertia has no effect whatsoever on the crew and anything inside the craft. David Froning, Advanced Systems Division, McDonnell Douglas, 1993. So these little tidbits, you know, little bits here, a quote there, a comment from this scientist there, it all begins to add up. Okay. Now we get to another aerospace scientist, an engineer, by the name of Ben Rich. Now, Ben Rich was the director of the Skunk Works for Lockheed Martin for about 30 years. Lockheed Martin is one of the aerospace companies that is way the hell ahead of mainstream establishment science. Ben Rich said before he died in 1995, he said, most of what you have seen on Star Trek is actually quite commonplace. Classified aerospace science is at least 100 years beyond establishment mainstream science. And then he jokingly said, we can now take E.T. home. Now this was about the time the movie, all of you remember the movie. That little dude run wobbling around there. He wanted to go home, wanted to go home. Ben Rich says, we can now take E.T. home. He said, if you've seen it on Star Trek, we have it. We can do it. He went on to say, I wish I could tell you about the projects we are currently working on. They are both fascinating and fantastic. They call for technologies once only dreamed of by science fiction writers. Let's put it this way. If we have things flying in the Nevada desert that would make George Lucas drool. Now, you remember George Lucas was one of the primary directors of Star Wars. Now, Ben went on to further say, before he died, we already have the means to travel among the stars. But these technologies are so locked up in black programs that it would take an act of God to even get them out to benefit humanity. Now, guys, that's the state of the situation. That's the mess we find ourselves in. We got a government. Thank you, honey. We have a shadow government. We are members of a trust. We have good friends in high places that are moving in our midst. And I jokingly say, and it's not a pun, we have good friends in high places. Now, not all of them out there like us very much. Because, guys, en masse, we're not very likable. We are a primitive, savage, and dangerous goddamn bunch of animals. We still go to war, and we butcher and kill each other by the thousands and the millions. It's no wonder we're under quarantine. Damn it, we ought to be under quarantine. We are not ready to go out there. And they're damn well making sure that we don't get out there en masse where we can mess things up and cause trouble. But we are being allowed to make little baby steps. We are making little tiny steps out there. Our technology that Ben Rich talked about, the accomplishments that David Froning talked about that we've had for over 30 years. We have technology, but it's not being released to the masses of people. It's not being released for your benefit. And whenever it will be released, I have no idea. I know this, that we're being monitored by intelligent, advanced, thinking creatures that are watching us carefully and not letting us screw up the mess completely. But, as I said, I will not live to see it. Many of you will. And when it all begins to come out, and remember that this old coot standing on the stage this afternoon in Southern California reminded you of who you are, and what you're capable of. Now, A lovely young lady tells me I'm running out of time. I'd like to kind of summarize, if I can, a little bit. I've touched upon a number of things. I've told you you're not alone, you've never been alone. I've told you you're living under a trust. I told you there are good friends in high places, that there are people out there, advanced intelligences who do care about you. There are others who don't much care about you at all. I've been told flatly to my face that there are at least a dozen guys, different places coming and going, different portals through dimensions, different planets, different star systems, different galaxies. I was told flatly that the Galactic Federation does exist and the headquarters is not even in our galaxy. And eventually, ultimately, hopefully, the human race will mature and it'll be able to go out there and take its rightful place in the stars, where we belong. Now, before I close up here, I have a couple of photographs to share with you, which I want to say to you, express, in my view, why you aren't going to be told the whole truth. Would you bring up the first picture, please, honey? Ah! Okay, honey. This is an Apollo 13 photograph taken as Apollo 13 was on its way to the moon, I think in 1970. 69 was when Apollo 11 went to the moon. Apollo 13, as you know from the history, never made it to the moon. It got around the moon, was able to come home. Only by the skin of their teeth were they able to come home safely. But when they're on their way to the moon, 1970, Apollo 13, they ran into some things out there that they may not have expected. This is a photograph. This is AS-13, that's roll 25, negative number 9. They found that when they're on their way to the moon, they weren't alone. There was some heavy traffic out there. And not only was it heavy traffic, but they were big things out there. I mean, gigantic ships out there. Now, here these guys are in this little tiny capsule, 3 of them crammed in there, side by side, in this little tiny capsule on the way to the moon. And they get out there. Here's the moon, by the way. What is this? Circular disk with a dome on top, about 1,000 feet across. Here's another big one. But who's coming in from the side here? Oh, this is a big mother. Here's the positive and here's the negative. And in this negative, you can see a little bit of the detail. Guys, this mother is 5 miles long. And they ran into it on the way to the moon, Apollo 13. As I said, they're crammed in this little tiny capsule on their way, you know, elbow and face, you know. You've seen the pictures. Because they get out there and they run into this stuff. And here's this big mother that's up, with estimate 5 miles long. Could have been a little more, could have been a little less, but it's a big mother. Next picture here. Okay. Now this big mother has moved into the center of the frame. Here's the moon again. Here's these other large objects. But here's this big mama. And I've often thought to myself, I've been on an aircraft carrier or two because my son is a retired Navy captain. Spent 30 years in the Navy. I've been on several of the Nimitz-class carriers. And these guys, these things are dynamite. I mean, 1,000 feet long. They have a crew of over 5,000 men. If you've ever been on an aircraft carrier, a Nimitz-class, it is absolutely awe-inspiring. And I used to joke with my son before he retired. On a Nimitz-class carrier, they have a snack bar. They have a squash court. They have all this. They have all that. They have a crew of over 5,000 men. Can you imagine what's going on something like this? Theaters, parks, you know, movies, Bowling alleys, for God's sake. I've been flat told to my face that one of their favorite pastimes is watching human television. For their entertainment, they find watching our TV hilarious. You know, have you ever watched TV to find out what the hell's going on? You ever watched Dancing with the Stars? Oh my God. Anyhow, here's a big mother, Apollo 13, 1970. Now, this has never been released by NASA. I wonder why. Next picture. Okay. In 1980, NASA, there's that word again. Sometimes when I say NASA, I feel like Richard Hoagland. I feel like spitting, you know. As Richard says, it stands for never a straight answer. Well, anyhow, NASA has got some damn fine people in it, and it always has. But the policymakers, the guys in the administrative section who run the program, are a bunch of damn liars, and they cannot be trusted. But wait a moment, I just described the United States government, didn't I? They're a bunch of damn liars, and they can't be trusted either. Anyhow, in 1980, NASA, some of the fine engineers and scientists, had discovered something strange going on in the rings of Saturn. They had taken pictures with telescopes and all, and they had found out that something was going on out there. So when Voyager was launched in 1980 on that journey, which it's still on, it's way the hell out there, going to the stars, it went through the rings of Saturn, and it took a series of photographs. And a retired NASA scientist by the name of Norman Berggren retired in 1980, or right after that, and expected NASA to release some of the photographs that Voyager took on its way to the stars as it passed through the rings of Saturn. Well, Norman waited and waited and waited, and NASA didn't release a damn thing, and Norman finally, out of exasperation and anger, had brought some of those photos with him when he retired. Norman Berggren wrote a book called The Ringmakers of Saturn. He couldn't get it published in the United States. I wonder why. He finally had to go to Aberdeen, Scotland to get his book published, and he finally was able to get it published. And in Aberdeen, they published The Ringmakers of Saturn, and the book became dynamite. NASA has never said a word about the photographs taken by Voyager in 1980. This is one of them. Here's one of the rings. Guys, this is a self-luminous, artificially constructed, obviously under intelligent control, object. NASA, Norman tells me, actually called them electromagnetic vehicles. This thing, guys, is the size of our moon. Now, our moon is 2,160 miles in diameter. Our moon, 2,160 miles in diameter. This thing is the size of our moon, artificial, self-luminous, moving all over the rings of Saturn, obviously under intelligent control. And now I think maybe you can grasp why they're scared to death to announce, to admit what they've seen, what they've encountered, and what they've learned. Because they don't believe you can handle it. I'll tell you frankly, you guys can handle it quite well, I think. I've always had the feeling when I talk to groups like this that I'm preaching to the choir. I mean, you guys are not, you're not typical. You're kind of special. You really are. The fact that you're here tells me that you're all pretty damn special. Your minds are open, you've got courage, you've got guts, you're able to deal with this stuff. That may shock you, but it doesn't scare the pants off of you, because I share some of this with you and you want to know more. Well, let's go into the next picture. Okay. Here's another photograph from Voyager in 1980 that Norman published in his book, The Ringmakers of Saturn. Here is another gigantic electromagnetic vehicle here. God knows how big it is, but what I want to point out to you is this. This is a constructed artificial object. And that electromagnetic vehicle is 2,000 miles long. Now, when I first learned this, when I read Norman's book and I had a chance to talk to Norman, I was in a state of shock. 2,000 miles long in the rings of Saturn. Norman said for a time NASA thought maybe they were making the rings. I pointed it out that it struck me that maybe they weren't making them, perhaps they were mining the rings. Because the rings are absolutely packed with nutrients. Not only water. Water is all over the damn place out there. But my God, can you imagine the minerals that could be in these rings of Saturn? And these guys, being advanced intelligences as they are probably mining them. They're helping themselves. Because it's a cornucopia out there, filled with all kinds of goodies. Energy is everywhere. All you have to do is know how to tap into it. You know, you mine the rings, you've got everything you need, you got enough damn water to fill the oceans of 4 or 5 different planets. Someone once said, my God, they're going to come and invade us and take everything we've got. Guys, they don't need a damn thing we've got. We haven't got anything they want. What they do want, at least the good ones, they would like to see us make it. They really would like to see this human race make this transition that it's going through. And I call it a transcendent transformation into literally a new species. We're going through this transition. And it's painful as hell. Many of you remember your own adolescence and the hell you went through when you were growing up. God, I remember when I first discovered girls. I went insane. It's a wonder I survived. But I went through, with a couple of loving parents, I went through my adolescence and I went into some adulthood. And thanks to the North Koreans and the Chinese in the Korean War, and thanks to the North Vietnamese in the Vietnamese War, I grew up some. And I'm still here, and I'm ornery as ever. And I'm sharing with you some what I consider to be dynamite information, which I think you might enjoy. Anyhow, 2,000 miles long. Now, try for a moment to consider the kind of civilization that is capable of doing that. A civilization that is capable of constructing ships, machines, factories, whatever they are, 2,000 miles long. A self-luminous object the size of our moon that moves everywhere at once. 2,160 miles in diameter. Well, anyhow, you get some idea of why NASA is scared to death, why the shadow government is scared to death, why they really don't know how to tell you what they've learned, because they're still in a state of shock, and they think if they told you the whole story, you'd go running, screaming down the street. Well, I know better. You guys are pretty damn smart. You know, I have tremendous respect for you. The only damn reason I come to conferences like this is to see guys like you again. It keeps me young, for God's sake. Makes me feel better about being here. Thank you so much. Means a lot to me. Oh, okay. We're clipping along here. Thank you, honey. Okay. I've shown you the Apollo 13 photos of the big mother out there over 5 miles long. As I told you, I was told flatly that they really do find the human race rather amusing. And they entertain themselves by watching our television. They find moving in our midst rather painful sometimes, but when they're by themselves and they're on their ship and they're wherever, they watch TV and they roll in the aisles and they giggle and laugh and watch the monkeys doing their thing, you know, dancing with the stars, as it were. Oh, God. Okay, where am I? I've touched on a hell of a lot. Let's have the next picture, hon. Thank you. Ah. God, I love this picture. You all seen this picture. You've seen others like it. Our ancestors called her Gaia. They said she was alive. Gaia was a goddess. And she is alive. She has a respiratory system. She has a circulatory system. And she has a heart. And that beautiful, beautiful lady is alive. And I have been told by my contacts and the good friends in high places that I have encountered over the years that this beautiful lady is considered to be the ripest and the richest zoological garden in this quadrant of the galaxy. And that's the first time that I knew that the galaxy had been divided up into quadrants, which I followed up with a lot of questions and got a number of answers. Yes, the galaxy has been divided up into quadrants. There are authorities out there, and there is power out there. And the galaxy, being a rather large body of stars, planets, has been divided up. But this beautiful lady, Gaia, is considered by them to be the richest and ripest zoological garden in this quadrant of the galaxy. An old military friend of mine said, "Are you telling me that I'm living in a zoo?" And I'm saying, "You damn right you're living in a zoo, and you're part of the fauna. This beautiful garden is treasured by them, venerated by them. This beautiful lady is rich and ripe with a variety of life, almost an infinite variety. And she's creating life all the time." Anyhow, the flora and fauna are almost infinite in their variety. And you guys are part of the fauna. And I said to my friend, the retired master sergeant, I said, "Behave yourself. You're part of the fauna. Stop misbehaving." Anyhow, I love to throw that out because it kind of taps into what I think the whole gist and the whole meaning of what I've been trying to talk about to you this afternoon. I've told you that the human race is a work in progress. The human race, the human species, is an unfinished product. You have potential. You have good friends in high places. And there are loving members of the trust who really do want to see you make it. Because where we are today, they have been before. So they understand what we're going through. They understand the pain we're experiencing. They know the pain of this transition, this transcendent transformation into a new race. Where we are, they've been. And where they are, we are going. And I want to leave you with that, with the understanding that I am so sick and tired of these doomsday people, these nutcases, these idiots that are continually trying to scare the pants off of you, telling you that you're doomed, that you're not going to make it, the world is coming to an end, oh my God, henny penny, the sky is falling. Oh, I'm so fed up with these guys. If I ever were to run into one, I might poke him in the snoot. I really do. Because I'm fed up with these doomsday people. Hey, hell yes, you're doomed. There's not a one of you in this room that's going to be here 100 years from now. You're all going to die. 100 million people probably died on the planet today. But 100 million more were born. That's the life. That's the process. So doom, oh, what the hell with it. But really, I'm fed up. There's so much money being made by doomsayers, you know. What is it, 2012, 21 December 2012? It's all ending poppycock, balderdash. Ain't gonna happen, guys. Make your plans for December the 22nd, 23rd, so on and so on. Make your plans for New Year's 2013. It's going to be a hell of a year. It's going to be as bumpy as the last 15 or 20 have been. Maybe even more bumpy, but that's part of what's happening. Don't sweat it. It's a hell of a ride. There's going to be some pain involved. You've been through hell already. You're going to go through some more. But that's what it's all about. You're growing, you're learning, that's why you incarnated on this planet, for lessons, to be a part of it. And it's a glorious experience. And I wouldn't change it for the world. I'm standing here, and my knees are shot, my hearing is gone, I'm told I'm losing my sight. You know, it's all part of the old program of this carcass that I am occupying at the moment. Guys, I'm 12 years past my warranty. You know, they stopped making parts for this model. You know, this is a 1929 model. So they don't make parts for this anymore. And I have also been told that my membership in the human race has expired. And I do not plan to get it renewed. Next time I'm going somewhere else. I got a little planet picked out in another galaxy out there that I've been to before, and it's very nice. It's like Switzerland in the summertime. And I'm planning to go there when I depart, but I ain't getting up a load to go tonight. So I may see a lot of you here in another few months, you know. I'm still around, I'm still as ornery as ever, and I'm still enjoying your company, and it's always a delight to come and share things with you people. And I want you all to know something before I close. The love, the warmth, the affection, the kind words you guys have shared with me at this conference has meant more to me than I can tell you. The love you have shown to me is one of the reasons I'm still here and what I'm still doing, what I'm doing. I have a tradition. I always try, when I close a presentation, to end with a couple of words that mean a great deal to me. And it's a quotation from Count Leo Tolstoy. Count Leo, before he died, said, "There is something in the human spirit that will survive and will prevail. There is a tiny and brilliant light burning in the heart of man that will not go out no matter how dark the world becomes. And in the spirit of that light that burns deep within every one of your hearts, that infinite immortal spark of divinity that you are, I want to say to you, love one another more. God bless you, and thank you. Good night.
Okay, how much time do we have?
I will leave the decision of whether the world is ready for the whole story with you guys. You tell Carrie.
You can handle the truth. Isn't that right? That's what I say, is you can handle the truth.
Well, they can.
Yes.
No question about it.
Okay, we might have a few minutes. Would you mind if people ask you questions?
No.
10 minutes. Okay, if you want to ask Bob questions, we'll do that. Do you want to sit down, Bob? We've got a chair here. Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. So somebody take a mic out. Do we have a mic without a wire that we can put in the crowd?
With this Apollo 13 picture, would you like to either confirm or deny for the people here today what was presented at one of the earlier international UFO symposiums at Laughlin about 10 years ago, that we were evidently carrying a nuclear weapon to explode on the moon, and we were warned by the trustees not to do it. And that picture you showed was the blockade that was thrown up, and when we ran that blockade, they could have taken Apollo 13 out, and all they did was disabled it and allowed it to come back. Would you like to either add to, confirm, or deny that little bit of truth that NASA never shared?
You've done your homework. Before he died, there was a brilliant electromagnetic genius by the name of Maurice Chatelain, who literally designed and created the Apollo communications program. And Maurice Chatelain was Nobel quality. I mean, he was a brilliant French scientist. And before he died, Maurice Chatelain said very clearly, yes, everybody in NASA who were there on the floor of control knew that they were carrying a low-yield nuclear device. And the sons of bitches, the nitwits, literally had planned to detonate this low-yield nuclear device on the surface of the moon. And everybody in NASA apparently knew the plan. A low-yield nuclear device on the surface of the moon, because they wanted to find out if the moon was indeed hollow. Because there had been evidence again and again and again, every time that when they would go and land and leave, and they would throw the lander back down on the surface of the moon, and they had placed seismic devices around here and there, and yes, the moon rang like a bell. In one case, the moon rang for over an hour, which indicated that apparently the damn thing is hollow. Well, we know it's not a natural satellite. So anyhow, yes, Apollo 13 was going to place this device, and they were going to get back up in orbit again and pop it off, and then they were going to monitor the seismic devices to see whether, is it hollow or not? Yeah. Well, our extended family, our cousins, said, no, you're not, you bunch of nitwits. You're not going to set off anything like a nuclear device on the moon, because we're here, and we're not going to allow that. So what did they do? They, with their genius, they caused a little accident. They popped an oxygen tank on the capsule, and the guys in Apollo 13 damn near didn't make it back. By the skin of their teeth, they made it back. And they were monitored all the way to the moon, all the way around, and all the way back to a safe landing. Those guys in that big mother that's 5 miles long, they monitored the whole damn thing. But they were not about to let the nincompoops put on a nuclear device on the moon, because the moon, guys, is an unnatural satellite. It is artificial. And it is generally pretty damn well hollow. And there's all kinds of guys up there of our extended family and our cousins, as it were. Yes, that story is true. Maurice Chatelain said, he published it in his book before he died. He was a brilliant man. And a number of other astronauts have said pretty much the same thing. The moon is pretty much hollow. It's an artificial satellite. It's 2,160 miles in diameter. Now that's a big satellite. I'll throw in a little passing thing that just came to my mind here before I leave. The moon is 2,160 miles in diameter. The polar circumference of the planet Earth is 21,600 miles. And interestingly enough, an astrological age is 2,160 years. Now, isn't that a bunch of interesting coincidences? What do you make of that, David? Coincidence here, a little there, 21,600, 2,160. An astrological age is 2,160 years. Oh, coincidences, of course. Anyhow.
Bob?
Yes.
I have someone who wants to say something to you. Henry Deacon. Henry Deacon. Ladies and gentlemen.
Henry.
Let me just say, this is Henry Deacon.
Where the hell have you been? With you. I haven't seen you since Barcelona.
That's right.
You've been on Mars? Again?
No, sir. I just wanted to say, all I wanted to say was, I love you. That's all.
Well, Henry, thank you. I mean, it means a lot to me.
I just want to say this is one of the bravest men you'll ever meet, and I mean that. This one right here, Henry Deacon. Okay? And I believe that you should honor him at this time. There are so few scientists and engineers that work on black projects that have the cojones to come forward and actually announce that they've been on Mars, number one, in public. You must understand the level of danger that this person has risked in order for you to learn the truth. All right? So I'd like you to give him a hand, if you don't mind.
Hey, guys. I want to say one thing in closing here. The next speaker is very dear to my heart. And I wanted you to prepare yourself to comments and observations from a very brilliant, beautiful woman. And if I don't get off this stage, she's going to beat me up anyhow. But the next speaker is my wife, Marcia Schaefer. So give her a big hand. But listen, I've spent enough of your time this afternoon, and I'm tired, and I want to say thank you. God bless you all. You mean so much to me.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Henry Deacon. Please give these people a hand. Thank you. Thank you, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Thank you. Thank you for your courage. Thank you. We owe you a huge debt of gratitude. Thank you very much. Thank you much. God bless you. And Henry.
I'm very thankful that Bob can articulate what he has said clearly. It's difficult to say, for me to even speak right now. But maybe that will change. But everything he said, he's just said what I would say. And so I don't have to say anything. Thank you. Our family is all here. I mean, we're part of the family. So that's what's good. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. You must understand the amount of history that's been completely ignored by the mainstream press. That's a man who got on stage in Barcelona, said he was on Mars, said he worked on Mars fairly regularly as part of the Black Projects. They are doing this. They're doing it with your money, in your name. And you must understand that this is being completely ignored, except by the wise people in this audience. and so I just want to say that it's people like him, whistleblowers, that is the reason that Project Camelot exists, okay? That was the inspiration for us. That's why we started our project. And that is what really kept motivating us all the years, has been whistleblower testimony. And in my view, regardless of what anyone says, the human genome, the humanity out there are a library. And our whistleblowers are our most priceless volumes. They're overlooked. Their stories have not been told. Project Camelot has only grazed the surface. And you must understand that I have been told by some of my contacts that we were together, Bill Ryan and myself, and we opened a door for a fleeting moment. And the door has closed. Slowly but surely, the powers that be have silenced most of the whistleblowers that have been coming forward lately. Behind the scenes, you don't know the number of people that are fighting in your name. We call them white hats. They are people that you will never know. They never will hold a mic in their hand. But a lot of them have risked their lives in countless ways, and they're still doing so today. So it's very, very important that you honor those people, that you understand the risks they take for loved ones, for friends, and for themselves, and the kind of torture, and I do mean torture, I mean MK Ultra type torture, the type of torture that Duncan and Miranda talked about yesterday night. This is real. This is not a fantasy, and it's also not being negative. This is real. This is what's going on every day behind closed doors, okay? And so these people risk their lives that the truth can come out. It's all about the truth, because you will never grow up into a spacefaring nation state, meaning the entire planet of humanity, until you know the truth about who you are and why you're here and what it's all about. So the truth is going to set you free. That's not a platitude. That is the reality. It couldn't be more true. Anyway, thank you for giving me a moment here. I feel like Miriam Delicato. I'm not going to cry, though. At any rate, Marcia Schaefer, we don't actually even have to take a break. So, Marcia, if you're here, we need time to set you up. Okay, how long do we need? 15 minutes. You've got 15 minutes for a break. So we'll be right back with Marcia Schaefer. Please do return. Thank you.